Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I just want to dig in a little bit more on the comparison between the mail order pharmacy price for a drug and what an independent pharmacy charges. So DOD and Express Scripts say repeatedly, it's in all your stuff, that the mail order program saves money. But DOD actually reported data to Congress on this in fiscal year 2023. That's the most recent we've got. So, Dr. Smith, did filling a 30-day supply of generic drugs at Express Scripts Pharmacy cost DOD, on average, more or less than filling the same prescription at a retail pharmacy?
Ma'am, I'm actually going to have to take that one back for the record.
You don't have to. I actually have it. It's the DOD report on this, and the answer is Express Scripts cost 12.5% more than the retail pharmacy when you put them all together on the generic drugs 30-day supply. So I want to dig just a little bit into how that could happen, because the way you describe the business model, it shouldn't be able to happen. So where does the money come from that goes to the different parties here? And one is a flat administrative fee. We've been talking about this flat administrative fee on every claim that it's mail order pharmacies process. And one lawsuit, that's where I got to look for data, alleges it's $17 that Express Scripts gets every time they fill a prescription. Let's look at the cost from the perspective of military families. The TRICARE Express Scripts website claims military families will save money by using mail, home delivery. And federal law states that for all non-active duty TRICARE beneficiaries, the copay for a generic drug is $14 with mail order versus $16 at retail. So I'm sitting there, military member, and I say, okay, I get it. It's a $2 difference, and the retail pharmacy is more expensive. But let's pause for a minute. Lots of generic drugs cost less than $14. So DOD requires Dr. Lansford and all of the other independent pharmacies to use a lesser of requirement. So Dr. Lansford, under a lesser of requirement that's part of your contract with DOD, if a drug costs $3, how much do you charge the patient? $16 or $3?
Well, the pharmacy benefit manager would decide that, and in this case, it would absolutely be the lesser of $3.
That's right. So you only get $3, right? If the thing costs $3. That is actually the law. That's in your DOD contract. But what about Express Scripts? Well, I have an explanation of benefits right here that shows that Express Scripts mail order pharmacies charge TRICARE in the federal government. Oh, I'm sorry, charge beneficiaries the full $14 copay, even when the cost of the drug is cheaper. So there's a big difference in what the customer is actually paying on the cheaper drugs. Now, in addition to the customer's copay, we've just done, there's a federal government copay, maybe $17, that's the best I can tell from the lawsuit, on every prescription filled. So that means a $3 prescription, that is, it costs $3, can earn express fees $31, a $14 copay from the customer, from our service member, and then a $17 administrative fee from the federal government. Express Scripts is supposed to save money for DOD, but it appears to me, I mean, we just worked the example here, and that's what your own data show, is that it costs more. So this raises the question that's really bothering me, and that is, it goes back to what Senator King was asking about, and that is, why on earth is DOD requiring vertical integration so that the very company that's supposed to be doing the managing also owns this pharmacy that is competing with our independent pharmacies. And in fact, we've got the data, charging more, at least in some of the cases, charging both our service members more and charging our federal government more. Do you think, Dr. Smith, that maybe it is time for DOD to revisit this requirement of vertical integration? And in fact, considering saying, no, you only work for the federal government and there is no vertical integration. That is, you do not own your own pharmacy at the same time that you're trying to manage pharmacy claims for the United States government.
Ma'am, using the generic example is a little bit problematic because the real cost drivers are the brand name drugs and the specialty drugs. I believe it's 56% of my costs come from 1% of the prescriptions.
So, look, let me just...
I do think that the generic question needs to be looked at. I frankly will have to take for the record to figure out why we don't decrement the cost of the drug part but of course, when you're mailing it, there is a cost associated with the mailing, et cetera, that we have to work through. The other thing is as I've said multiple times, and hopefully you recognize, we have to go with TAA compliant sources. So Cuban doesn't need to do that. We do.
I'm sorry, maybe I wasn't clear in my question, Dr. Smith.
I'm sorry, I mean,
No, it's my fault. I'm just trying to ask, do you think maybe it's time to revisit whether or not the person or the entity that manages prescription drugs does not also own a competing prescription drug dispensary that competes with every independent pharmacy in America and creates incentives to prefer your own subsidiary over all of the independent pharmacies out there? Do you think it's time maybe just for DOD to rethink that? You're getting ready to renegotiate a contract here.
Ma'am, we're always willing to look at how we can do this better, and certainly we can look at it, but most of what EFS is doing, quite frankly, is how we have set it up and what we've told them to do it and perform it as. So I think it's reasonable for us to look at it. We clearly will. I still, because of the way our contract is set up, I don't get the issue that clearly we need to have more discussion on relative to conflict of interest. Because we're the ones that are driving people to go to the retail. All our rule sets say you need to go to retail for brand and specialty because it's dramatically cheaper through mail order than it is via the retail network. And that's why, for example, with Accredo, the specialty provider that is an affiliate of Cigna, that is the owner also of Evernorth, we make 92% of those come through us because we buy the drugs rather than the specialty provider. But happy to look at the system and see for our next contract whether there is a better way to set it up.
Dr. Smith, let me just say, it may be cheaper to do some things by mail. I fully understand that.
Dramatically.
But I do not know why it is that the company that is administering how we're going to get prescription drugs out to our people and how they're going to get reimbursed for it needs to own the mail order pharmacy and be in direct competition with every individual pharmacist out there and have an incentive to drive all of our prescriptions in a way that will maximize profits for this company. If we're not in alignment on that central question, I just don't know how we go forward here. But thank you for having this hearing today. We need independent audits, and we need to rethink these DOD contracts.